everyone, welcome back to Grounded Haven Homestead. This is Michelle and today I'm out in the garden and I wanted to harvest some of our lemongrass. This year was our first time growing lemongrass and we actually grew it from seed and it was really easy to do, and it's been growing really well for us, probably because we have very hot and humid summers and this is a tropical plant. It's one that takes a really long time to get to the point where it's big enough for you to harvest, so you can probably only grow this if you have a really long growing season. And I've seen that some of the stalks are getting to be a pretty nice thick size, at least as thick as a pencil, so I wanted to harvest some of it today. So I'm going in here and I did plant my seeds really thick because I didn't expect that they would grow this vigorously. So I think next year I'll probably space them out a little bit more. And I'm just trying to pick out those thicker spears because those thinner ones are not really going to have enough of that center meat that we want out of these. This was a little hard to do just because the grass was so thick, so I really had to just take a knife and hack away at it until I could pull out individual spears. And just for reference, I believe I started these seeds in late winter, so I think I started them in February. We planted them out after any danger of frost, so probably around May. And it is now mid-September and we have some stalks that are ready to pick. So this is what we got today, just a few spears because a lot of them still are on the thin side, and I'm probably gonna just let those grow until right before our very first frost and then harvest all of these at once. And I'll probably do a video on that later on in the season, just showing how I preserve all of this. We're only going to be using the lower parts of the spears today, so I've just cut off the tops, and I've also just peeled off a couple of those outer layers because we're not going to use all of it. If you want, you can dry the tops for tea. They're still very fragrant and they're great for that, but I already have some of that inside, so I don't need this today. This was a particularly thick stalk that I was able to find that looks really good, and this is what we end up with. Like I said, they're still just a little bit on the small side, so they're not quite as big as what you could get from a store, but I think there's going to be enough in there that we can use for one meal, and I'm very excited to try it out. And this barely made a dent in the plant because this plant has grown so well. You can barely even tell that I harvested anything from there, and I'm really excited to go in at the end of the season and see how much we can get. So we're inside now and I'm going to start prepping the lemongrass. And I don't have too much experience cooking with lemongrass, honestly, so I'm just going to show you what I'm doing, and if you have a better way, just let me know. But the lemongrass is very fibrous, so I'm cutting these into small segments and then splitting them lengthwise. And once you do that, you can really see that center part that is very tender. It's a different color than those fibrous outer layers, and that's the part that I'm going to take out and use for the recipe. Those outer layers that are fibrous, you can chop them very thinly, but I don't really enjoy the texture even when they're chopped up, so I'm just going to be using those inner parts. So you don't get very much per stalk, and especially for these ones that are a little on the thin side, there is not very much. And this is why you really want your lemongrass to grow as long as possible before you harvest it. But between those 5 to 6 stalks that I picked, I was able to get a good handful of those inside parts, and this equals out to a few tablespoons, which is exactly what I'll need for the recipe, so that's perfect. So here's another look at the color difference between the outside layers that have a little bit of that purple tinge, and the inside layers are very pale white and light yellow. So what I'm going to be making today is a lemongrass and soy sauce marinade that I'm going to be using on chicken and tofu. I'm going to be making a Vietnamese grilled chicken. I'm saying grilled, but I'm actually going to do it in a pan. This is a dish that I go out and order with my family all the time when I'm at home in New York, because New York has really good Vietnamese restaurants and we don't have any Vietnamese restaurants where we live right now, so it's been a while since I've had this and I thought it would be nice to be able to cook this with our homegrown lemongrass and have a little bit of a taste of home when we're very far away. Right now I am just finely dicing all of those inner lemongrass spears that I removed, and I'm also going to dice up half of a small yellow onion. You would normally use shallot for this, but I don't have that. And then I'm also mincing up a few garlic cloves. So here is the lemongrass, onion, and garlic all together. I'm going to add a couple of tablespoons of sugar, a teaspoon or so of dark soy sauce. This is thicker and sweeter than normal soy sauce and adds a really nice color as well. A few tablespoons of fish sauce, and then also a tablespoon of vegetable oil, and then I'm going to squeeze in half of a lime. And this is a really delicious and versatile marinade. I'm going to be using it on chicken and tofu today, but I would normally order pork chop when I'm at the restaurant, so if I had that, that's what I would have used. And I imagine this will also be really good on beef. So we're going to be using some bone-in chicken thighs here, and these are really special chicken thighs because they actually came from a few of the roosters that we culled this spring, and it was our first time dispatching and processing chickens, so it was quite an experience for us, and it just makes this meal all the more special. I poured half of that marinade into the Ziploc bag, and then with the rest of it, I am going to be marinating some tofu. I'm using firm tofu here that I've pressed for about 15 minutes. And I'm just going to make sure both sides of the tofu are coated. And both of these things are going to sit for anywhere from an hour to 24 hours. The tofu especially could use extra marinating time, I think, and I let mine go for about 8 hours. While I have all of these sauce ingredients out, I'm going to be making a dipping sauce that you would normally have served alongside this. So I started off with a tablespoon of sugar, and then I add in some sliced garlic and hot chilies. Then I added some lime juice, fish sauce, and water. And that is it. This is a really common condiment that you would find at Vietnamese restaurants to serve alongside all sorts of things, and it's really delicious. It's such a good balance of flavors because it's salty from the fish sauce, sour from the lime juice, sweet from the sugar, and a little bit of a kick from the chilies. Later in the day, when I'm ready to cook this all and everything's been marinating, I'm going to pan fry everything. I think I've mentioned, but this is normally a grilled recipe, but we don't have a grill, so I'm just doing this all inside in a cast iron pan. I'm going to pan fry this tofu, and if you think you don't like tofu, you have to try it this way because this marinade makes it so delicious. And when you pan fry it, it gets all nice and crispy on the edges. And then in that same pan, after the tofu is done, we're going to do the same thing with the chicken. I'm placing the skin side down and just gonna let it go until the skin is blackened. I really want that black charred flavor since this is something that's normally grilled. This is a way I can get that kind of flavor while doing it indoors. After it's had time to cook for a few minutes on both sides, I'm going to remove this to a baking sheet, and I have the tofu that I've removed already on there as well, and I'm just going to place this under the broiler for a few minutes, and this is going to contribute more to that smoky grill flavor and get everything nice and crispy. Here is the final meal. I served all of this on top of some vermicelli rice noodles and with some sliced cucumbers on the side. Another thing that would be really great with this is pickled carrots and daikon, which is something that I want to make if ours grow really nicely this fall. So hopefully I'll be able to post how to make that in the future, but even so, this was such a delicious meal. You just pour that dipping sauce right on top of the noodles or the chicken, and it was so good. I think I could have used even more lemongrass, so hopefully our lemongrass will do well and I can make this meal again later in the season. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again next time.